Have you ever looked at a really persistent problem and just wondered, why isn't this getting solved? Especially in agriculture, where for decades we poured in money and effort, but the same issues just linger. Well, today we're going to get to the bottom of it, using the incredible work of Dr. Nimrod Israeli. We're going to look at the deep structural reasons these efforts fail. And let me tell you, the answer isn't what you'd expect.
I love this quote because it sets the stage perfectly. It's basically saying, stop trying to run faster on a broken treadmill. The solution isn't just more effort. It's about understanding the machine itself. We have to ask, what is the fundamental mechanism here? And are we even looking at it the right way? That's the real question we're tackling today. And this isn't some abstract theory. Let's ground this in the real world. Think about West Africa, or really countless places around the globe. You see the same story play out over and over. Farmers losing their crops to pests. They can't get their produce into the big supermarket chains, and everyone's shouting about needing more money or more processing plants. They all feel like totally separate problems, right? But what if they're not? What if they're all just symptoms of one single, much deeper issue? So here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll start with the puzzle itself. Then we'll look at why the usual suspects, the typical explanations, just don't cut it. After that, we'll introduce two game-changing concepts, the production machine and its ultimate limit. We'll see what happens when the whole system gets out of whack, how to fix it by anchoring it to reality, and finally, we'll uncover a universal law that governs all of this. Okay, so let's dive right into that central puzzle. Why on earth do these problems stick around? We have incredible technology, we have international aid programs, we have dedicated farmers, and we have a global market that is hungry for their produce. And yet, the system feels completely stuck in neutral. It just doesn't add up. And to really get a sense of the scale here, just look at this number. In some places, fruit flies wipe out anywhere from 30 to a whopping 80% of the mango harvest. Think about that. That's not a small leak. That's like the whole dam bursting. And here's the kicker. The technology to control these pests has existed for years. So the fact that this problem is still so massive tells you it's not a technology problem. Something much, much bigger is going on here. And this, right here, is the core idea of this whole analysis. The abandoned farms, the pests, the inability to get into foreign markets, they are not a random list of bad luck. They are all symptoms, all visible signs of a single hidden structural disease that has infected the entire system. So, if we've been treating the symptoms, it means we've been chasing the wrong culprits all this time. Let's take a look at the usual suspects that always get trotted out to explain why things aren't working. You know the drill. We're always told we need better tech, or more investment, or different government policies, or, and this is a big one, more factories to process things. And look, these things aren't necessarily bad, but Dr. Israeli's work shows they miss the point entirely. They're like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg. They don't fix the underlying fracture. Let's talk about that value add idea for a second, because it's so common. The argument goes, hey, stop selling raw mangoes, let's build a factory and make mango juice. Sounds smart, right? But here's the fallacy. If you don't already have a guaranteed high-paying market that wants to buy that juice, all you've done is add a bunch of cost. You've made a more expensive product that still doesn't have a buyer, and you haven't solved the farmer's core problem, a lack of stable income. Okay, so if those are the wrong answers, what's the right way to see this? This next part is absolutely crucial. We're going to define two concepts that are the keys to unlocking this whole puzzle, the production machine and the governing constraint. First up, the production machine. Now, that might sound complicated, but it's really simple. It's the engine of the entire system. It's the one thing that actually creates value from scratch. In agriculture, that engine is the single hectare of land. Every single dollar, every salary, every profit margin up and down the supply chain ultimately comes from the income generated by that 1 hectare. It's the source of everything. And of course, every engine has a limit, a top speed. In this system, that limit is what we call the governing constraint. And it all boils down to one single moment. The instant a shopper in London or Paris or Tokyo actually buys the final product. That one purchase sets the total non-negotiable amount of money available for the entire system. It doesn't matter if there are 5 people in the value chain or 50. All of their salaries and profits combined cannot possibly add up to more than what that one end customer was willing to pay. That is the hard ceiling. So now we can finally put these two powerful ideas together to see the problem crystal clear. What happens when the costs and demands of the system, the whole structure, grow bigger than the income the production machine can generate, an income that's capped by that governing constraint, well, that's when things start to fall apart. Let's just walk through how this disastrous cycle happens. Step 1, the hectare of land generates a certain amount of cash from that final sale. Step 2, you start piling on layers. You've got transport, certification bodies, exporters, marketers, and each one takes a slice of the pie. Step 3 is the overload. The total cost of all those layers becomes bigger than the original pie itself. And the result? Stagnation. The system becomes top-heavy, unstable, and it simply can't support its own weight anymore.
And what does this look like on the ground for the farmer? Well, instead of operating with a surplus, they're now borrowing money just to survive. They can't afford to properly maintain their orchards or invest in new equipment. So what happens? Quality starts to slip. They're trapped in a cycle of debt and survival, and the whole system grinds to a halt.
This point is so important. This is why just throwing money at the problem doesn't work. When you inject more cash into a system that's fundamentally misaligned like this, the money doesn't fix anything. It just gets eaten up by the bloated, inefficient structure. It's like pouring water into a leaky bucket. You might prop the system up for another year, but you haven't actually increased the amount of money the hectare can generate. You've sustained the problem, not solved it.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time on the problem. What about the solution? Well, to build a system that actually works, one that's healthy and sustainable, we need to introduce this idea of anchoring. The difference here is like night and day. In a broken, unanchored chain, people get paid just for doing their little job, whether or not the final product actually sells. The risk gets passed down the line like a hot potato until it lands squarely on the farmer. But in a healthy, anchored system, everybody's paycheck is tied, in some way, to that final sale. The risk is shared across the board, and that creates real accountability for the final results. And this isn't some weird, abstract concept. We see anchored systems all around us. Think about any successful company. The engineering department doesn't get a big bonus if the sales team fails to sell the product they built. Everybody's success, from HR to marketing, depends on that final revenue from a customer. It's the same principle in a cooperative, like a kibbutz, where the whole community rises or falls together based on the success of their business. The key is that everyone is in the same boat, exposed to the same final outcome. All right, let's zoom out for the final and maybe the most profound piece of this whole puzzle. Because this isn't just about mangoes or farming. This is about a universal law that dictates how any complex system can grow without collapsing. Here it is. This is the big takeaway. A complex, sophisticated system, one with lots of moving parts, quality control, logistics, all that good stuff, it can only survive and thrive if the income from its production machine grows right alongside it to pay for all that complexity. You can't build a skyscraper on the foundation of a shed. If the complexity of your system outpaces the revenue that's meant to support it, it is only a matter of time before it all comes tumbling down. And this leads us to a really powerful and, frankly, sobering conclusion. The persistent poverty we see in these agricultural value chains, it isn't an accident. It's not a result of bad luck or people not working hard enough. It is the direct, predictable, mathematical outcome of a structure that is designed, unintentionally, but designed nonetheless, to demand more from its base than that base can ever possibly provide. It is, through and through, a structural problem.
So I'll leave you with a question to chew on. Once you have this mental model, the production machine, the governing constraint, the need for anchoring, you start seeing it everywhere. So where else in our world, in business, in government, maybe even in our own personal lives, where else do we see these complex structures being built that have totally lost their connection to the real-world value that's supposed to sustain them? It's something to think about.